Hello, everyone. My name is Lijin. I'm the Senior Managing Partner of ACMF Circular Economy and also the Founding Chairperson for the Circular Business Association. So what I do through ACMF Circular Economy is basically to provide advisory and consulting services to companies who are aiming to transform their business from the linear economy into the circular economy, and also to support companies to actually identify and monetize circular economy revenue. Whereas the Circular Business Association, which currently has successfully been registered in Malaysia, is part of my contribution to building the strongest SME circular business ecosystem in order to make the final link for businesses to accelerate their transition into the circular economy. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining and for connecting with me on LinkedIn. I think we met, as I meet many people. So yeah, I think the first question is just for those who don't really know what the circular economy means. Could you give us a little background?
Right. So the circular economy it basically is defined as an economic model that is restorative and regenerative by design. Now, what that actually means is that if we look at today's economy, we just take resources, we make products that deliver certain services and performances to us, and then we no longer need those products. We just dispose them, throw them away. But where is away? And that's what we define as the linear economy. Now, the circular economy is talking about how can we use by design to make sure that all these products and materials and effort that's gone into making these items can actually come back to the economy and return to the a natural environment safely. So the circular economy is very much a systems thinking, and it follows three principles to achieve that circular economy. So number one is to design out waste and pollution from the beginning, so that if there are certain materials or certain products that we can't actually handle at the end of its life, then we actually design out that product or material from the first place. The second is about keeping products and materials in loop for as long as possible at its highest value, to make sure that all the effort, the energy, the materials, the even water that goes into it is very much used to its optimal level in performance before we even think of disposing it or recycling it, etc. And the third principle for the circular economy is about regenerating natural systems. So imagine, what if every time we take out the packaging and all the food that was there actually made our soil and water much more healthier compared to, ending up in a landfill actually polluting our soil and water. So by using these three principles, the circular economy is really trying to say that how can we actually have economic activities that by design will help our world become better? So it's not just about doing less harm, but we're talking about how can we actively do more good.
And I think so many people are maybe not aware, right, of the life cycle of a product that they buy and how it does go from, extracting that resource from the ground to being dumped in a landfill somewhere. And so I was wondering, do you have any really, I don't know, like one concrete example we could talk about? So the life cycle of one product in the linear economy, how it normally is, and then what would that look like in a circular model?
Right. So, okay, I'll take an example about packaging, because at the moment, I think that's one of the big issue. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen some pictures of sea turtles biting into plastic, or, birds choking on plastic packaging and all that stuff. And also this year, we actually saw in the news that for the first time, we saw the scientists actually managed to find microplastics in human blood. So it means it's actually traveled, through the entire food chain from microorganisms all the way into our own bodies as well. So plastic packaging is something that a lot of people would are concerned about, but they don't realize that it's actually an inbuilt sort of linear system. And it's not actually plastic's fault. It's just how we've used plastic in a very single use, in a very linear model. What I mean by that is that very often when we buy a product as a consumer, the choice of how that product is presented to us is already locked into certain plastic packaging. And we can't not buy the product without the plastic packaging. And what can we do with that packaging at the end of it? There's no other way but to throw it into the bin, because we can't find another way for it to use it. It can't be refilled. It can't be done any further. And a lot of that is what we call like single-use plastic. Okay, so in a sort of more circular model, we're actually looking at plastics as a material in terms of its characteristics. Let's look at plastic as something that's very durable, something that can be collected if it's in a very virgin, pure form. It can go straight back into being used again or being to produce another product. But the problem with single-use plastic is that we've spread it so thin, and it has so many different types of plastics in it that makes it almost impossible to truly recover or even recycle a lot of that plastic, and it just leaks into our environment. So in a circular model, we want to actually rethink about how to use plastic and how we can actually keep that plastic in circulation for as long as possible. And if that plastic is something that doesn't even need to exist in the first place, can we actually design out that part of it? Now, you probably will see some sort of movement in the they call it refillution. Yeah, so that's something re-emerging nowadays, where people are talking about, could there be a way to actually refill products instead of using single-use plastics to package it in smaller scales? And there are a few companies that's emerged. One of them is called Algramo. They come from Chile, and they initially had wanted to deal with the issue of poverty premiums, whereby poor people who need to buy in smaller quantities actually pay a higher price per unit of the content because of all the packaging and transportation involved in producing smaller packaging. So what started out as more of a social cause, eventually they got to know the circular economy and how by designing out the waste and by keeping products and services products in use for as long as possible, they could actually recover a lot of value that would otherwise be lost. They have now actually been able to launch their technology and platform to help a lot more people use refill services and pay for the cheaper unit price of the product, while also sort of as a subsequent effect of the thing, actually removed a lot of single-use flexible plastic. I'm quite happy to see that they actually managed to broaden their reach apart from Chile into Mexico, and also most recently in UK, they got their first store installed with that at Lidl. So you might want to look out for the news there. That's really interesting because now with your smartphone, you can actually pre-purchase how many grams or how many milliliters exactly that you want of a product. And by scanning the RFID code of the package itself, it can register how many times you've reused the bottle, and at each time it gives you a very small discount on the product itself. So it really makes sense both on cost side as well as the waste minimization side.
Great. And it's very much based as well on like biomimicry, right? Because if we look at nature, everything works in a cycle, in a circle. And yeah, for example, the leaves fall off the trees and then they act as compost on the ground as they decompose. And so I guess it's not just about reducing packaging, right? But maybe we're even talking about special kinds of materials that can be composted or even add nutrients to the soil in an ideal world. So what's the most impressive thing you've seen so far?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this point about the biomimicry part of it, because as you clearly mentioned, our natural world moves in cycles. And what we consider as waste is actually something that is nutritious for the natural world. It's just, if we look at the linear model, the amounts and the locations where we deposit all these so-called waste or nutrients become a problem. So I think, like, when we look at the circular economy from that lens, it's really in the regenerating natural systems perspective. And they're saying that um, what if because we are alive and because we need to use all these products, that we actually make our ecosystem even healthier? That the water is cleaner every time, that the soils are richer every time. And I think one of the most impressive ones that I can think of is a group called Balbo Group. They're based in Brazil, and they actually had a lot of sugarcane plantations. Now, a lot of people, when they think of plantations, it's monoculture, pumping in a lot of pesticides and fertilizers, killing off a lot of biodiversity in the area, and also reducing, let's say, water qualities and things like that. But what Balbo Group was able to do, and of course it did take a period of time, where they managed to actually use a redesign of their farm agriculture equipment. They managed to change it into the soil quality actually to be similar to the natural forest in its surrounding areas. And as a result of their efforts to move closer towards regenerative agriculture, they found that not only did biodiversity improve and it actually returned to the area, but they were able to take out all the pesticide and fertilizer needs. The water table actually recovered, and even the crops that they chose, were crops. I mean, the subspecies that people had initially thought, had no economic value because they were so susceptible to pests and everything. So it's quite amazing, actually, that not only did they use species that are considered weaker, but they were able to bring those species back and solve the pest issue by really looking at how the natural environment was working in that area, and helping the soil come back and recover to that level where it can support that level of biodiversity, and that just sort of cascaded into more and more environmental benefits. Now, from that, the company not only became one of the largest organic sugar producer. They also sell organic bioethanol, which was a new revenue stream open to them. And they also could supply electricity to the communities that were surrounding their plantations. So if we really look at circular economy from that lens, that's what I meant by it's not about doing less harm. It's not about just cutting down on your pesticide and fertilizer usage, but actually, because the plantation is there, because they are doing their agriculture and harvesting it in a certain way and processing it in a certain way, it actually led to a net positive effect, doing more good because they exist.
Yeah, I think that's a shift I've noticed in the last couple of years, right? That it's not enough now to just talk about minimizing our impact, like, oh, let's do the minimum damage. It's more about, can we actually do good? Can we make things better than they were before?
Yeah. And I think, like, at this juncture, probably it's useful to point out that, of course, circular economy is you have to look at it like a tool. It's a pathway that will help us achieve the sustainability or the climate ambitions that we've been talking about. Will this be the best tool in the future? We never know. But it's one of the best tools at this point in time, because it's really challenging us to think much further upstream, even from the design phase, about how we are delivering the performance that we need on a day-to-day basis. And therefore, it's really forcing sort of like the businesses to ingrain it as being part of the business model, rather than just the traditional way of sustainability where we're talking about it being a noble cause, a charitable thing, that shouldn't be should cost more and shouldn't be convenient, and shouldn't earn you a lot of profit. I think moving ahead, what the circular economy has really done as a tool towards helping us achieve sustainability and solving the climate crisis is that it helps to reconcile this need for us to earn our income, earn our livelihood, use products and services, basically be alive in order to, while at the same time generating that good outcome that we all look forward to. If you look into the natural world, you can see that, that's very mix of ideas about what mushrooms or fungus actually do, because fungus is of course a big problem for certain things because it breaks down the materials and therefore makes things more vulnerable. But if we didn't have fungus, then it wouldn't be able to cycle of nutrients into the world and bring it back into functional use. Without fungus, let's say in the soil, a lot of plants wouldn't be able to trade and use their nutrients in a more sort of optimal way for their growth. So I think looking at the similarities between biomimicry in the natural world and also the circular economy concept, that's a very nice sort of overlap there, because we have to keep thinking about how can we make our living as humans more of a positive outcome rather than just trying to minimize our negative outcome.
Yeah. And also, if we don't, I mean, if we stick to only a linear model, then what kind of future are we looking at, if any?
Right. So if we stick to our linear model, unfortunately, if we look at our ecological footprint, I think WWF a few years ago had already come out to say that we're using more than 1 Earth worth of resources. If we look at the donut economics research that has been done, we've already exceeded a lot of our planetary boundaries, not only in terms of carbon, but even things like freshwater use. We might think there's a lot of fresh water in the world, but actually it's only like what 0.3% of the entire world's water is actually fresh water that we can use. It's exceeded certain loadings of nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, which can have effects not only in terms of the water quality and therefore our health, but also our soils, the productivity of it to produce food and things like that. So then if we add on the IPCC report, Interpanel Climate Change report that came out recently, we are actually very much on track to exceeding 2 degrees Celsius increase in our global temperatures. Now, if you've ever had a fever where you've increased like one degree in your body and you're feeling pretty awful, you can sort of imagine how bad it would be if our entire Earth actually increased that much. And we're already starting to see its effects. It's coming in extreme weather conditions that people haven't been expecting. There's a lot of flooding that's been occurring. Forest fires beyond what people had thought would be possible, sudden freeze or hot waves and things like that. But from the business perspective, we're also seeing a lot of disruptions to the supply chain as a result of these incidences. So if you imagine your country being one that doesn't suffer from all these extreme weather events, unfortunately, you wouldn't be spared from the effects of climate change, because it makes your country a very attractive place for people to be migrating to and to seek resources from. So you really will be starting to see changes in how people settle, people use resources, and that's not something that we have the luxury of choice for. So I think like it can be quite depressing if we look at the future of if we stay in the linear model, because there's just no way for us to really solve the problems when we keep treating the problems as an end of pipe issue. Whereas in the circular economy, it's really saying that no, there's no end of pipe. There's just continuous cycles, and we have to start somewhere. It's not down there that's the problem, or up there that's where we have to actually change the entire system. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically we have no choice, right? We have to start thinking in a more circular way, because as you said, there is no a way. There's just another part of the earth that's going to suffer, and the consequences will, yeah, like cascade down to affect all of us. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about what is your organization doing right now. And you said you're mostly working in the UK and also Malaysia, right? So could you tell me a little bit more about, yeah, what kind of stuff are you seeing in your work at the moment?
Right. So from the work that I do, I actually do quite a bit of raising awareness about the climate crisis and the circular economy as a pathway to solve it. And what I do is actually work with a lot of business owners to help them understand how this would affect their business. And from there, actually sort of see that how can we support them in making that transition over in a profitable manner. So that's sort of like the awareness raising part. And then from the consulting and advisory part, it will be more of the business transformation, business models, and things like that. But importantly also, we realize there is a big gap for, let's say, big companies who want to make a change. Let's say the Nestle's or Coca-Cola's or H&M's of the world that would want to make the change. Even if they have made the mandate globally to achieve net zero or to have a sustainability policy in place, they find it difficult where at the regional level to find the right vendors and suppliers who can understand them and who are able to deliver the solutions in a particular way, right? So it's the same thing in the circular economy as well. When a company says we want to go circular, but you have no vendors or suppliers that actually understand what circular economy means, or how their solutions can help the main company become more circular, then it's very difficult to make a transition, not even talk about profitability yet. So one of the activities that we do through the Circular Business Association, which we formerly call C-Bass, like the bass instrument in a musical ensemble, we're here to harmonize the different voices between the players in the ecosystem and really build together this integration of solutions that will close the gap for the end client and help them transition over more smoothly. If we look at how sustainable products have been marketed to date, a lot of it is individual companies selling an individual product, and there's no integration between the providers. So as the end client, it becomes very difficult to sort of search out whose product would be compatible with who, or who are other vendors that they will need in order to deliver the final solution that they actually need, to become more sustainable. So Circular Business Association it has successfully been registered in Malaysia, but we are opening it to a global membership because we strongly believe that the climate crisis is a global problem, and we do need global solutions to solve it. So what we do is three things. Number one, we want to help our members to increase their sales and customer base. And the second, for circular economy players to increase their offerings as well as competitive advantage over linear economy products by facilitating product bundling as well as joint product development. And number three is to actually help regulators implement the policies that can accelerate the circular economy. And that doesn't just mean a circular economy policy, but it means all the different policy tools out there that could help, shift and move the economy towards a more circular route and therefore solve the climate crisis. So that's three sort of things that we do through the Circular Business Association. And in some part, it's almost like we're building up the ecosystem, and that ecosystem doesn't just have end users and manufacturers or even the recyclers, but we actually even have like the raw material producers, be it primary or secondary. We want to include those from quality and assurance, maintenance, service providers, the people involved in the technology provision, research, academia, logistics and supply chain management, as well as even the product designers and the inventors as well. And also funders and investors. So trying to get everyone to understand that, what is the circular economy and what role they could bring to this. And therefore we have a platform of trusted sort of vendors and suppliers to work together towards that direction. We hope to accelerate that transition.
Oh, and do you feel like you've noticed a change in the consciousness over the last few years? Are people becoming more and more keen to be part of the circular economy?
I think circular economy probably you can see the keenness increasing quite a lot in the last 2 years globally, with like of course, it already started back in 2011, 2012 among certain big corporates here in Europe, but it's still a very European sort of thing. And of course, Europe has followed up with their circular economy action plan as part of the Green Deal. But apart from that, in the last 2 years, we've actually seen the coalition for circular economy in Latin America and Caribbean coming up. Then in the ASEAN region economic bloc, they also introduced their circular economy framework for ASEAN. Not only that, of course, in China since 2008, they already had their circular economy law in place. And it started off very much as an industrial symbiosis approach. But since over the years, I think they've just evolved, continue adding on and adding on more and more of the circular aspects into it. And most excitedly, I think the financial sector, there was quite a big shift in interest in the last 2 years, where about 30 different financial institutions with 18 trillion US dollars of assets under management actually voiced their support to transition, help companies transition into the circular economy. So I think on a sort of like global scale, the circular economy has definitely become more interesting. But when we start coming down to the individual business levels, then you will see that the interest is still quite low. And there's still a lot of like confusion as to what is the circular economy, how that fits in with the general sustainability conversation, how does that fit in with the climate conversation, and therefore there's very much a need for people to come in and help them understand that and how that will affect their businesses and what they should be doing in terms of responding and preparing for it. So I would say that at the individual company level, probably at this point, the climate discussion has really heated up a lot more, and that's linked more to like carbon markets and the taxes that are going to come into place, such as the carbon border adjustment mechanism that Europe is going to put in place, which will basically mean the global value chain need to be prepared to absorb that cost and do a lot of climate disclosure. So that's sort of heating up, and we're finding that the circular economy is really just one of the pathways that people may consider in order to achieve a lower carbon emission and therefore not be subject to all these carbon market and regulations that are coming into play. So I think there's still a lot more work to be done in terms of the circular economy in its entirety, because circular economy is more than carbon, and it's more than recycling. It's much more than that. The design part of it is really something I think that we need to work more on. The systems thinking part of it is something that we really need to work more on. And so like the easiest way to sort of check if people actually get the systems thinking, let's take food, for example. Are we looking at agriculture sector, then food processing manufacturing sector, then retail sector, then food waste, then biomass energy production as separate entities? Or are they actually talking together as a system? Now, if they're not talking together, then the chances are that they have not actually understood the circular economy yet. And therefore, there's a lot more opportunity there to tap into those gaps. And if you have the solutions in those gaps, then you have the access to be earning part of the next $1 trillion business.
So that's a very interesting thing you added in there at the end as well about the $1 trillion business, because I suppose you might encounter people who think, like they think with a lot of environmental things that this means making less money or sort of giving up on profit almost, right? And of course, there are people who say we should completely, revolutionize our financial system and all of that. But yeah, so you would say that actually, if I'm a CEO watching this now, that this is a big opportunity actually for business, right?
It is a big opportunity. And I would say probably at this point, small, medium enterprises have even a little bit more advantage than big businesses because they don't need the high minimum order amounts that a lot of big businesses have to commit to. And the circular economy, as well as the climate crisis itself, is being very dynamic, and it's changing so quickly that you would want some degree of agility and customization. So smaller minimum orders and things like that really work to the advantage of small, medium enterprises. And at the same time, big businesses would be hungry to find those types of vendors and suppliers that can actually deliver those solutions, because you will know that every region is different. They may require slight adjustments to the solutions that they put in place. So what, let's say, Coca-Cola does in Latin America is not going to be exactly the same as what they do in Asia. It won't be exactly the same as what they do in Europe or even Africa. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a very important point there that you pointed out as well, is that, it's not so much that because you're doing, and I think traditionally we have said that when you're in the environmental sector, it's driven by passion. But in the last 2 years, we're really starting to see a lot more people looking at the environment developments as an opportunity, because essentially we're changing the entire way the economic system would work. And it doesn't matter which profession you are. It's not just about the manufacturers. If we start looking into, let's say, even the professionals, accountants, lawyers, people like that, they too will be affected by the circular economy. Let's take an example of, in the circular economy, they talk a lot about sharing, the sharing economy as well, and how we could keep products and materials in use for longer if we could share items or equipment and things like that. But one common problem is the insurance part of it. How do you deal with that? And that actually touches into the insurer's realm. Also, if you're a company that traditionally you earned your revenue by selling off those items, but now you're changing it into like a product as a service model, how are you going to deal with accounting, asset depreciations and things like that? It becomes like another whole new realm that needs to be developed. So if you're able to come up with those types of solutions that obviously people need in order to make the transition, then you're really preparing yourself for that future, rather than sticking to a very traditional way of doing things as they are. And I think like people are starting to see the prize more and more, but they're still not very sure how to get there. So that again is where it needs a lot more work.
Great. So where would you recommend people get started if they want to find out more about circular economy, or if they want to find out more about what you do, where can they go?
Right. So for getting started in terms of just learning about circular economy, I'm actually a Smith MacArthur Fellow, so I will have a little bit of bias to direct you to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on circular economy. Of course, if you are a business and you want to actually understand how you could get started to look into transforming your business, then on the Circular Business Association webpage, which is www.circularbusinessassociation.org, we have a free methodology called Circular Business Model, where you can have a 6-step sort of a process to help you basically organize your thoughts about how you would want to make that transition profitable. Yep. Of course, you can also always reach out to us at Circular Business Association. We will have events and webinars as well to discuss and talk about circular economy. Apart from that, we are also starting up a circular catch-up, whereby we're bringing together business owners and talents who are keen to pursue the circular economy as a way to get to know each other, build the comradeship, network, and support each other in your journey.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. And yeah, I hope we'll get to talk again soon. And yeah, I'll be looking into the circular economy a lot more for sure.
Right. Thank you very much, Gwyneth.
Thank you.